Hello guys, welcome to this lecture. So now we will see the LDAP authentication. So before configuring LDAP authentication in the Palo Alto firewall, we need to spin up the services inside the Windows server. So this is the console of the Windows. So let me just open up the DNS. We will create the domain for us. So if you go by the topology here, you can see, we have this domain lab.local. So this is what we need to create. So this is the server in forward lookup zone. You need to create one more zone and we will call it lab. So just give it the name lab. Next, create a new file and next finish. Now we have this lab.local, right? And going forward, we are going to host few services. I mean, I'm going to, host one website here. I'm going to give it the name test.lab.local. So 10.225 will be the address. Okay. So let's create that a record. So test. Oh, my bad. I need to define the lab.local. So let's delete this and create the zone again. New zone. Next. Next. Lab.local. Next. 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 Finish. Inside this, let's create one a record. Uh, test.lab.local. IP address will be 2.2.5. So basically, I have hosted one web server, right? So we will do the testing later on. So we have done this. Now we need to spin up the Active Directory services. So just go to manage, add roles and features, click next, role based and feature, next, next, and Active Directory Federation services, Active Directory Lightweight Directory services, right? These are the options available. So we will go with Active Directory Domain Services, right? So next, 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 install. So once this will be installed, we are good to create our user accounts. So we will create the user account here, and we would need one administrator account of this particular Active Directory, which will be used for binding the firewall with this particular server. Okay, so so far we have seen that in Radius and Tecax we just need the secret key, right? But here we need to provide the actual details of the service account. You can create the service account, or you can use the main administrator account to, connect the firewall with this Active Directory. In production, nobody is going to give you the admin credentials. So basically what they do, they create one service account and they give the credentials so that you can use that particular service account, right? And you can do your configuration. So let me just open it up. Tools, administration, users and computers. So we have some sort of problem. Promote this server to a domain controller. Add a domain controller to existing domain. Yeah. So lab.local administrator. So basically, we have the server is not operational. Okay. So root domain lab.local. Next, global catalog DNS server is already there. Okay, password. Next, DNS delegation is already created. So I mean these are the services which takes time, although you need not to take care about it, right? It is already done with your account management teams who takes care of your groups, user management, right? So it is just that we are doing this lab recreate so that you can understand how these services are spin up in the environment, right? In production environment. So just few more checks and then we are good to go. I mean, this is the wizard way of doing it, right? You follow the configuration wizard to spin up the services, but we do have scripts available. So in PowerShell, you can run the scripts and job will be done in few seconds only. So let's install, and once the installation is done, then this server will be promoted as a domain controller, and then we can create the users and we can define the roles, right? And then we can integrate this particular server with our this server has become the domain controller now. So we can integrate this particular domain controller with our firewall. So few more seconds and then we are good. So you can see domain controller lab.local has been created. I mean, it will take time. So let me just pause it here, right? Because it needs to create 1300 objects. So let me pause it here and I'll resume it once the installation is done. Creating new domain users and all that. So let's wait for it. Okay, so now it is done. Let me sign out and it will log in back in the domain, right? So this is how we spin up the Active Directory services. And now it is restarting. It will boot again. Then I need to sign in into my domain, that is lab.local. And once it is done, then we will create one service account or we will use the administrator account to do the binding with the firewall. So, I mean, why we are doing this, it will also help us in user identification, user ID. So, you need to integrate your servers where your actual user database is available with the firewall so that they can learn about your user database, right? And then only you will be able to create the user-based policies, group-based policies, security policies, right? And they will start taking hit. Otherwise, what happens if you don't integrate your servers, your user database servers, so you won't be able to, you know, uh, create the user-based policies, right? And if you will create it, they will not take hit if the databases of firewall and your Active Directory is not in sync, right? So that's the reason we should synchronize the user database in your directory services and the database in your Palo Alto firewall or any next generation firewall which has this capability of user ID. Okay, so now system is up. Let me log in. So now you can see lab /administrator. So Now we are logging into the controller. So we have changed the password. Okay. So now server manager will spin up and it will bring up all the services like DNS, your Active Directory, right? And your other services. All these services will be up shortly. And then we need to log in into our Active Directory console to create the window to create the users, define the group details and all that stuff. So first, you can check your DNS. So because we have already created the lab.local manually, so it is there, right? And now you can go to your administrative Active Directory center, and here you can, you know, create the user and assign the roles and responsibilities or group. So we have this lab.local, and here you can see built-in computer domain controller, foreign security policies, and you will see the users. Inside user, we have this administrator, right? Guest. So similarly, we will add new user and we will give him the name Rohan Sharma. User principal name is going to be R Sharma at lab.local, and SAM account name will be lab/R Sharma. Okay, so these are the attributes, login attributes we have. Okay, so this is done. Then password options. Password never expires. User cannot change password. Then office email, these things we can skip for now. Member of, so we can add the group. So we will place it in a default group right now, or you can create the groups, if you want. So we don't have any group. So let's skip and then scroll it down, scroll it down. So all good. Let's click OK. Okay, so we need to have a complex password. Done. Now we will create the group. So this group will be like admin group, and group type security, group scope global, and it is good, managed by. So we can check for the names and we will check for administrator. So this account, okay. Then member of is not required. Members, add Rohan into it. Check names. Okay, that's it. Done. Okay, so now Rohan is there. Type user. So if you click here, so we have Rohan. If you double click on it, and if you check member of, you can see domain is part of domain users and admin group. Okay, so now let's do one thing. Let's do the binding. So to do the binding, this server is reachable via trust interface. So first of all, modify your service route configuration, and here for LDAP you need to modify the interface 1 by 2. Okay. Now just go to LDAP, add LDAP server name, LDAP server IP address. It is 10.226. So 10.2.2.6, port number 389, and administrator use only. So we check this tick box. I mean, we tick this checkbox so that no other user can make the changes here, right? Now type will be Active Directory. Okay. Then base DN is going to be it is going to be DC lab, comma DC local. So this is our base DN, and bind DN is equals to, you know, CN is equals to, you can check it here. So if I check my directory services, so if you open it up, so it will be domain users. Domain user is my primary group. Okay. No issues. I will use the administrator account anyhow. So if you see administrator, organization, account details. Okay. So let's go back to the firewall. So it will be administrator, then DC equals to lab, and DC equals to local, password. Require SSL? No, we don't need it. Okay. And just do commit. I mean, this binding is also required in the case of user ID, when there are two types of user identification methods available in Palo Alto Firewall. One is user ID based, another one is agentless, right? So, that binding is also required in that case. So we will discuss this in more details in coming lectures. So this is quite tricky. Once this is done, then we can create the authentication profile, and then we can call it inside our, you know, admin ID, that the admin will be authenticated by using this particular auth profile. So let's just check it out whether it is working or not. So now in the auth profile, we need to take precautions regarding the parameter modifications, because now we have domain up and running. Okay. So what you need to do is when you're creating the authentication profile, so LDAP auth profile, so type is LDAP server profile. We have this. Now login attribute, which login attribute you are going to use, user principal or SAM account, right? So you need to define that here. Uh, and user domain and username modifier, if you need to modify, in any particular syntax, user domain, backslash user input and all that stuff. So we don't need that. We will keep it whatever user is going to enter. User domain is going to be the lab.local, but since we are not going to modify the username, so we are not going to add it here, right? And advanced allow all. So for time being, we are keeping it simple, right? But when you are going to configure the Kerberos single sign-on, in that case, you need to configure everything. Okay. So now administrator and Rohan admin. So just a minute. We have defined the user as R Sharma. Okay. So R Sharma is defined. Okay. So let's create one more administrator with name R Sharma and authentication will be LDAP role based security admin, or let's say audit admin. Okay, let's do the commit. So as you can see, this integration is not that straightforward as compared to LDAP and TCAX, right? There are multiple things which we need to take care when we are integrating our Active Directory with firewalls to synchronize the group details and all that stuff, right? And let me show you one more thing. Once you create the server profile here, right? So if you scroll it up, if you go to user identification, if you go to group mapping settings, right, and if you click on add, and if you go to group include list, right, if you are able to traverse the directory, your LDAP directory, it means the setting is correct. If not, it means things are not correct here, right? So if you select the server profile, so it is not recognizing the server profile. Why it is so? Not able to recognize the server profile we have created. So basically what I was trying to say, when you go to this user identification group mapping settings, if you go to add, if you select your server profile here, by any chance it is not coming, then if you go to group include list, you will be able to see the entire forest, your Active Directory forest here. If that is coming, it means firewall is able to communicate with the domain controller. Okay. So now we will do the hit and trial, right? So once the policy is pushed, yeah, it is done. You go incognito and here we can run the tail follow yes auth D and let's try. So let's go incognito, log into the device and username R Sharma. So let's see in authentication, you can see LDAP session to remote server. Source is this pan auth D binding with administrator dc lab.local, and meanwhile this is still loading because we are stuck here. It is not moving further. Now it has moved. Failed to bind, cannot contact LDAP server, failed to bind. So LDAP auth server is down. Auth failed, authentication failed. So if you check here, it has failed. Reason being that we are not able to bind the session properly, right? So let me go to this server profile here CN name administrator, comma, CN users, comma, dclab.local. Okay, let me make this change. So I forgot to add this user. So if you see the tree, so it's like this, in lab.local, you have users, and inside users, you have this administrator account, right? So in this same fashion, you need to define it here, your bind DN administrator inside the users folder, inside the lab.local. So let's see if this helps. So I will be able to conclude. So these are the challenges which we get in case of LDAP integration. So it happens. Okay. And now let me see if we are able to get it inside the user identification as well. No, not sure why it is not giving me this server profile. So it is almost done. So let's have this and let's go incognito again. R Sharma. So it has started. So again binding. So server is down. So binding is not working. Okay. And here we are getting invalid username and password. So the main problem is with this binding. This is not happening. Okay, my bad. Actually, I've written the wrong password. That's the reason it was not working. Let me just correct the password of the account. So this is, if you remember, we need to change the password when we logged in into the domain. So due to wrong password, the binding was failing. So let me just do this change quickly. See, these are the small things which you need to take care when you're doing the configuration, and it happens in the production environment as well. So this time this should pass. So if you see that we are receiving this username, LDAP auth profile is also getting invoked. So the only problem was, the binding was not working properly. So we were not able to reach this server. So let's see. It is almost done. So go back here. Let's initiate it. Okay, configuration just got committed. It will again time out. So this time failed to bind. Again, server is down. Oh, one more thing. I mean, we need to make sure that firewall is not blocking our connection, right? Just like we need to, do it inside Windows machine when we spin the Radius server. So similarly, we need to check that the connection is not blocked. Advanced settings, inbound rule, and Active Directory controls are there. So let me just create one rule to allow this. Port 389. Next, allow the connection. Next, LDAP, finish. Let's try again because now password is correct. So if I refresh and if I go to device, user, group mapping settings, I'm not sure why this server is not coming. This is strange. I will remove this. Yeah, now it is coming. So due to that administrative use only, it was not coming. So let me just update this so that we can check, whether we are able to parse the LDAP tree. Meanwhile, let me just check. So administrator built-in account for administering the computer/domain. Okay, it's part of users only. Cool. Commit is done. So let's check it out now. Go to LDAP server and now you can see lab.local. It is appearing automatically. So if you click on drop down, it should give you the entire parsing of the domain controller. If it is able to give you that, then it means, see, you're getting this error, failed to connect to 10.2.2.6. Okay, so now let's do the basic troubleshooting. Let's verify whether we are able to reach this ping host 10.2.2.6. So we are not able to reach it. Okay, so what could be the problem? So if I will check it out, Ethernet 1 by 2. So if I will check my service route configuration, this LDAP is using this, but still I'm not able to ping it. Ping source 10.2.2.1 host 10.2.2.6. So let me just do one thing. Let me quickly modify the firewall settings. Let's see in server, it happens. New rule. So we can look out for the connection. And let me also create another rule. Mm, ICMP, I need to check. I think what we are missing here, I don't have IP address configured on this machine. Sorry, my bad. I just forgot to add that IP address on this interface, you know. So this is the basic connectivity issue. So we have not configured the IP. That's the reason it is unable to reach the required destination. Default gateway 10.2.2.1 and preferred DNS is local. Okay, close. And because we have two interfaces, this one interface is in a different subnet, right? Cool. And now let's do one thing. In our DNS, let's define. So let's define the forwarders, because going forward, this is going to be the our local DNS server as well. So let's have forwarders here. So if you go to properties, forwarders, okay, it is already there. Cool. So I think now it will be better. So if I will initiate the pings, so yeah, we are getting the pings. So it was the basic connectivity problem initially. Now let's do this. Group mapping, add your LDAP server, go to include, see, users, and you can see our group admin group, right? And you will be able to see Rohan entry as well. If I will select the domain users, so Rohan's name will also come. Okay, so we are able to do this. Now let's try it out. So one more time, R Sharma. So auth status success, binding done, successful. So I hope now it is clear. So the basic connectivity problem was there. So I mean multiple problems were there. Password wrong initially. Then this user parameter I forgot. Then IP was not configured, right? But whenever you are configuring the LDAP, and if you just go to this user identification and if you click on add group mapping settings, always select your LDAP server and just go to this group include, and if you are able to open up this entire forest, right, so it means your firewall is able to communicate. You can see admin group we have created, and then you will be able to see rest of the you know things which are there in your active directory. Okay, so now you can do one thing. You can see here that we have successfully logged in, right? And if we go to the logs, so you can see here that let me show you. Admin user through web UI, R Sharma auth request, auth profile, LDAP auth profile. Then MF is not configured, authenticating the user R Sharma. Then you know we found the server. Then we try to establish the connection binding with the bind DN, right? Then we try to establish the connection with the server and DN in entry, okay? Found LDAP attribute, then DN in entry Rohan Sharma user lab.local found LDAP attribute user account control, and then you can see received user, okay? DN sent to, the distinguished name sent to LDAP server, then user is accepted, password doesn't expire, and then you can see binding back to bind DN, and authentication is successful, authentication is success, and then this user is able to log in into the firewall. So this is how we configure different authentication profiles, right? And similarly, we will later on see Kerberos, then Kerberos single sign-on, then SAML, Okta, then multi-factor authentication. So we'll carry out all these remaining authentications, and then you can accordingly create the authentication sequence and call it out in your profile. Okay. So this is how we do the configuration. Thanks for watching this video.